Hey guys, today we're going to continue our introduction to some statistics. As a review, we have learned about sample groups. So what happens is that I want to know something about this huge population, but there's no way I can ask every single person their opinion. That would take way too much time and I don't want to do that. So instead, I create a sample group. And in my video, biased versus representative, I talked about, what makes a good sample group and what makes that biased group that's not going to give you the best data. So what we're going to do is take a sample group and we are going to make inferences about the data gathered from that sample group. Today, I'm going to use one example. We're going to make some general inferences just by looking at the data that was collected from the sample group, and then we are also going to calculate an inference with this sample group. So I'm going to show you how to do those two things. So let me introduce you to our sample group. On the board, I have written our sample group is 30 kindergartners. A teacher wanted to know for her kindergartners what their favorite animal was. Now, school-wide kindergartners, so she only took 30 of them. She experimented with her class. She gathered that data, and this is what she found out. 2 of the students preferred buffalo, 8 preferred hamsters, 6 preferred giraffes, and 14 preferred dogs. Now, if you're just asked to make some inferences about this data, here are some inferences you could make. 1, you could look at this and just simply say, it looks like most of the students liked dogs. That's a correct statement. You could also say that it looks like almost half of the students preferred dogs. 14 is almost half of 30. That's another inference we could make. Another one is that not very many students preferred buffalo. And then just one more example is that you might notice almost the same amount of students preferred hamsters as preferred giraffes. So those are just some general examples of inferences you can make by looking at data collected from a sample group. Now we're going to take it one step further, and we're given a question that we are going to have to use this data from our sample group to answer. So we are actually going to have to calculate our inference because we can't see it visually on the chart. So the question is, how many students would prefer giraffes if 50 were asked? So this time we have 50 students instead of 30. Notice our chart doesn't display that. So instead, we have to calculate this inference. So the first thing that I'm going to start with is writing down some information that I know for sure. By looking at the chart, I know that 6 students out of 30 students prefer giraffes. What I want to know is how many students would prefer giraffes if there were 50 students. So I set up 2 ratios, and I'm going to turn them into a proportion by putting an equal sign in between them. By creating this proportion, I'm able to use cross multiplication. From my calculations, I am able to see that 10 students out of the 50 would prefer giraffes. So I can take this number that I got and I could put it up here and replace G with the number 10. So I took my data from my sample group, what we knew, and I was able to answer the question by calculating my inference. So it's not for sure that if I'm gonna go out and ask 50 students about their favorite animal, that 10 of them would say giraffes. I'm making my best estimate. I'm making an inference using the data that I was given, but this time I actually had to do some calculations. I couldn't just look at the table like I did in that first examples of making inferences. So there was your introduction on making inferences by looking at data from a sample group, and then also how to do some calculations using your skills from ratios and proportions with the cross multiplication that you should have used and acquired before moving on to statistics. So hopefully anytime that you are given some data, you're able to look at it and make some inferences